Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to see how to deploy with AWS Code Deploy service. So before we get started, I have created a video on continuous integration and deployment with AWS Code Service series. So this is the fourth video on that. So kindly watch the previous videos to get you started with code service, AWS code services. So I have given an overview on AWS code commit repository and how to commit the code into AWS code commit repository. And also the second service I use is AWS code build, and we have built and we have tested with AWS code build services. And this is the next video on deploying with AWS Code Deploy. So before we get started, let's see what is AWS Code Deploy. AWS Code Deploy is a platform agnostic automated code deployment service. We can run AWS Code Deploy anywhere, not just on specific EC2 instances. The service works by installing an code deploy agent on servers, which responds to the deployment task. AWS Code Deploy make it easy to handle rollback and provide supports for two deployment types. They are in place and blue/green. AWS code deploy deployment groups target a group of instances to deploy the application. We can even specify the instances using tags or auto-scaling groups. AWS code deploy also leverages as elastic load balancer to balance the request between deployment group instances. So in this video, we are going to set up like two deployment groups, one explaining on in-place deployment group, and the second one is we are going to set up blue/green deployment. So I have created before itself the auto-scaling group and the load balancer. So we can directly select those auto-scaling and load balancer from the code deploy configuration. Now I am in the code deploy window. So to get started, I am going to click on create application. So I'm going to give an application name. Math app. And the compute platform I'm going to give as EC2 on-premises. Why? Because there are two instances running, and as I said, we have auto-scaling groups in place and also load balancers in place. So I'm selecting EC2/on-premises. I'm clicking on create application. So our application has been created. Now I need to create a deployment group. So first, I will show how to create a deployment group for in-place deployments. So I'm clicking on create a deployment group, and the deployment group name I'm giving as in-place, and a service role. I already have it. So what the service role will be giving is like it will be granting AWS Code Deploy access to the target instance. So the deployment type I'm going to use in place. So this in place will be what kind of deployment this will do is it will update the instance in the deployment group with the latest application revision. So during a deployment, each instance will be briefly taken offline for its update. So basically, this kind of in place deployment approach will have an offline, means we will have some downtime. Okay, and as I said, I have an EC2 auto-scaling group. So I am going to select the EC2 auto-scaling group. Here you can see two math instances are there. So two instances are running in that auto-scaling group. I have selected in here. And here, the deployment setting here, you can see it, right? So there are three options over there: code deploy default one at a time, code deploy default half at a time, code deploy default all at once. So this particularly what this will be doing is This configuration will keep the most instances available to serve traffic while a rolling update is performed, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform one at a time. So I don't want like a kind of a brief outage for both instances. You should not be updated at the same time. You should update one at a time, and after the first one is completed, then only the second instance need to do the update. So I am doing, I am setting this particular configuration code deploy default one at a time. And as I have a load balancer in place also. I'm using classic load balancer. So I'm selecting the classic load balancer in place. And if you see, these are all the advanced options, trigger, alarms, and the rollback. So rollback is also an important feature. So here, what I need to do is like, if any deployment, if it is getting failed, right? If, for example, you may make some kind of configuration issues on the issue, right? So at that time, you should roll back to the previous update or previous version or previous revision. So I'm selecting this particular thing, rollback when your deployment fails. So this will instruct AWS CodeDeploy to automatically roll back a failed deployment. So a deployment fails like when any of the instances fail to reach the AWS CodeDeploy, right? CodeDeploy lifecycle event, or a failure caused by any issues, right? So on those scenarios, it should not stack, or it should know like what it need to done by a code deploy. So it will use the if I going to select this particular option, it will use the last working code revision as the rollback point. So all the things has been given, and I'm giving create deployment group. So our deployment has been successfully created. So every application, it will need an appspec.yaml file, right, as the root of the project directory in order to work with AWS CodeDeploy. So now let's see what is in there in app-spec.yaml file. app-spec.yaml file, right? So here it uses this will be this specific file is there, right? So this file will give an AWS CodeDeploy on how to deploy the application. So it is similar like in AWS CodeBuild. In the previous video, if you watch in the AWS CodeBuild, we have explained about the buildspec.yaml file, right? So for the AWS CodeDeploy also, we need a file called appspec.yaml, so that it will be knowing like what are all the things that need to be deployed, and the directory, and those things will be explained here. So here we have given the OS as Linux, and the file section says where to copy the files from the build artifact. And also we can use the permission section, right, of any file in the artifact bundle. And also we can see the hook section that will be running the script at different life cycles in a deployment. And the lifecycle event can trigger an arbitrary command. For example, here you can see the application stop, application start, validate service. So application stop will stop the running instance of the server, and the application start will start the starts running the server in production mode. And validate service. So basically, this particular service will check that server whether a response to the request on port 8080 or not. So these are all the hooks we can easily custom also. We can do custom configuration also. So if any of the command, right, if the three command we are given, right, application stop, start, and validate service, if any of the command in the script fails, the deployment also will be getting failed. And what will be happening? We have given the rollback. It need to deploy the latest running version, right? So that will be going to the rollback will be getting triggered. So now you got an understanding of that appspec.yaml file. Now I'm going to create an blue-green deployment group also now, so that post running this code build, we will be knowing like how the rollback is happening, or how the in place is happening. You can easily see the difference. So now we have created in place deployment group. Now I'm going to create blue-green deployment group. So we are going to follow the same approach. I am clicking on create deployment group. I am giving the deployment group name as blue green. All right, I am using the same service role, and now I am going to use blue green deployment type. So here, if you see, it will be replacing the instances in the deployment group with a new instance, and it will deploy the latest or application revision to them. After instances in the replacement environment are registered with the load balancer, then the instances from the original environment are deregistered and can be terminated. So in this particular deployment is like we will not experience any downtime or anything. Why? Because the replacement once they are registered with the load balancer, then only the original instance will be getting deregistered and it can be also terminated. And I am selecting the Amazon EC2 auto scaling group. And here the traffic routing, reroute traffic immediately, or I can choose, I will choose whether to reroute traffic at what time or what day. I can choose that also. And also, as I said, that I can even terminate. So those specific setting also I can even do it here. So I'm just giving for as is the demo purpose, I'm giving thing as a reroute traffic immediately, and also to terminate the original instance in the deployment group. And the deployment configuration, I'm not going to give all at once. I'm going to give one at a time, right? And I'm using classic load balancer as CA-app LB. And the rollback option, I'm going to give rollback when a deployment is get failed, it should get rollback. So I'm clicking on create a deployment group. So our blue-green deployment group has also been created. If you see here, we can able to see 2 deployment groups in place. So in this video, we have seen what are the difference between in place and blue-green deployment in AWS CodeDeploy, and also we have created on both deployment group type, and also we have seen like how the appsec.yaml file has been used for the AWS CodeDeploy. In the next video, I am going to explain how to automate a deployment with AWS code pipeline. So stay tuned for that video.